Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on our webinar. I am Paula Macaggi. I'm the Head of Partnerships and Global Strategy here at Rethink Retail. And today we're going to be discussing seamless checkout experiences with a limited workforce. It's not new for anybody that labor shortage is one of the several challenges that persisted after this pandemic. And these last 3 years have demanded a lot from consumers and retailers to adapt, especially acceleration of technology adoption, especially the checkout experience, so how to improve the consumer journey and how the checking out, the part of checking out is so important when it comes to the best customer experience. And today I have the best experts in this subject, Mark Bunney. He's the head of go-to-market strategy and professional services at Ingenico, and our dearest Rethink Retail top retail influencer, Trevor Sumner. He's the head of AI and innovation at Raydiant. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us, Paula.
Thank you, Paula.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Trevor, I will start with you. I mentioned briefly a few trends that have accelerated the checking out experience, but I want to hear from you. What are the trends that influence more this push towards a more seamless and automated checking out experience?
Yeah, I think we're living in this really exciting time, right? Where, we have some technologies that are literally changing the way we think about the world, whether it's all the stuff in AI and all the talk about ChatGPT. But the thing that I'm most excited about is computer vision, because it lets us understand the physical world. So this means, the ability to do cashless checkout, although you do need a lot of cameras in every different angle. It means even for self-checkout and seamless checkout, like having better loss prevention, which is one of the big frictions there. We've got better connectivity via 5G coming. The cost of computing has gone down. These devices are more reliable. And we're also just fundamentally from a retail perspective, we have better, kind of systems for managing product info, pricing, inventory. And that was in part because COVID happened and we had this desire to provide that info across multiple different channels. All of a sudden, every grocer had to put everything online and share it on Instacart and also enable BOPIS. COVID was this huge accelerator in both need and also cultural transformation, which is really interesting. It put the focus on kind of grocery industry on thinking through where, normally online penetration is low and the technology mindset is to deliver things slowly, but it made them develop them very rapidly and to build cultures where they realized they could deploy technology rapidly and build more aggressive timelines. And then lastly, there's this macroeconomic thing around, kind of labor and increased costs and shortages have put greater, pressure on automation. And, in the grocery sector, your margins are really thin. They're like 2 to 4%. So, anything you can eke out for an extra quarter point, that's a really big deal. So it's this perfect storm of technological, cultural, and economic forces. As I said, it's a really exciting time where we're finally seeing rapid change.
I agree. And these technologies have been here for a while now. And I know that it's not so easy to implement them. Some of them can be very complex. Mark, what are the major ongoing challenges for retailers and customers when it comes to seamless checkout?
Thinking about this, there's really been two that I've seen over the years that have been challenges. One from a retailer perspective on what types of operational changes do they need to make in order to implement self-service or even to mobile technologies within a store or outside the store? Because again, you could implement it, but if the customers aren't able to really pay that way or do the transaction, or it impacts the rest of the merchant's business and just isn't efficient on that side, it's going to fail. So it's really looking at and evaluating. It's like, okay, what's going to change from an operations perspective? I think the other side is looking at it from the consumer viewpoint. Is we're all consumers, but we're constantly evolving. And I think we have to think about it from the consumer. It's like, where do they want to complete that transaction? And again, what Trevor was making with the pandemic and just the evolution going from purely in store to then almost purely e-com related, and then coming back. But that was all driven by the consumer, how they want to actually do those types of transactions. But I think retailers have to think about, they don't want the consumer to be in the middle of that transaction and then have something happen, or they have to go somewhere else in the store to complete it. So it's again, it's thinking through that mindset, because if it changes the view of the consumer, they may not complete the transaction, and then the merchant's going to fail. So those are really the two key ones that we've seen in the market.
Yeah, Mark, I think you're dead on, right? Which is like, you know, we all want, like, we've got this new shiny thing and we want the consumer to use it just as we planned, right? But, you know, changing the behavior of people is very, very hard, right? Like, we all talk about how grandma, you know, scans a QR code on the menu in restaurant because of COVID. But if you actually look at it, I haven't seen a single case study on really mass QR code adoption and high conversion rates, because, you know, yes, we did it for that menu thing, but it's hard for me to change my behavior in store, right? And then even if you change the behavior for some people, you don't change it for everybody. So what do you do for the laggards, right? And like, hey, it's great, we got, you know, just walk out technology, but we got somebody, you know, somebody who's a laggard. I don't want to be ageist, but I was going to use a metaphor. Who wants to pay?
Someone that doesn't have an app that does, that wants to pay in cash, or don't have a mobile.
But demographics is really important in understanding. And that's where merchants have to really understand who their true customers are. Great example is, over the last few years, contactless adoption in the US market has grown dramatically. While other parts of the world, Canada, Europe, it's been the norm. It was interesting. My wife's father, he was visiting us, and he didn't even know he had contactless cards, or what the value was for him in actually being able to use it. Again, it's a simpler experience, but he was in his 80s. It didn't resonate with him, versus a millennial. They probably already knew how to do it, or they're doing it off of their smartphone today. So it's something that, again, looking at demographics is also important. It's also why you can't make necessarily a 100% shift to one type of technology or solution, because you could alienate some of your customers in the market. And if you do that, then you could lose revenue. And then the whole process is essentially failed.
Yeah. And it's not just ages and demographics, right? It's also people who want to pay cash, people who want different payment modes. It's like, we're working at Raydiant, we're working with the Women, Infant, Child program, where, you know, people don't want to ask if, you know, this product is eligible for benefits everywhere they go, because that's, you know, not a nice experience, right? So we're helping them scan products to figure out whether it's eligible and give them recipes to figure that out. But okay, great. You want seamless checkout. How does Women, Infant, Child program work? How does food stamps work? How do all the different things that you're like, oh, but I'm trying to optimize for the happy path, the majority case, but it'll have so many unintended consequences. And so thinking through those things and deploying them and in a test mode is so critical. And we've seen people who put out tests and then walk backwards because, for example, Walmart, they did a whole thing around kind of more seamless and cashless checkout, and walked it immediately back because they had a loss prevention problem. Well, now they can go figure out how to solve that and then try again. And so it's this kind of, you know, launch and iterate, and learn at every opportunity. But it's complicated.
It is, and I completely agree. I think the merchants that are successful today, that will continue to be successful, they have to test and try. They have to validate. Will it work? And then the WIC example, I hadn't been thinking about it, but that's also where it's sometimes beyond technologies for self-service. So there you have to do some education and training for store associates when those scenarios come up. How do you address the consumer in the right way, so they're not ashamed, or they're not having a bad experience from that perspective.
Yeah.
Nice. And one thing, well, we have so many new technologies that are available today, some more complex than others, but some retailers implemented it successfully, some not very well. Mark, I want to know from you, what are the most effective technologies implementations and strategies that you've seen retailers implementing for seamless checkout?
Yeah, so I think a couple of them, and maybe more payment centric in nature, is really thinking about from their consumers, making sure all the different payment methodologies are supported. And if your self-service solution is different than, say, an in-lane or online experience, you could have an impact. So that could be as simple a thing as supporting like a buy now, pay later, or it's maybe supporting like PayPal. So it's beyond the credit, debit types of payment types, because consumers we're using different ways to pay. So you have to make sure that's going to be in alignment to how they're paying today. Something that I think that's coming, and I think it's really exciting because it really simplifies the experience. Because I mean, payments is still pretty complex. We're all trying to make it easier, better, more seamless, but it's still there. And it's things such as like an Amazon Go, or even we announced with Fujitsu at NRF, a palm vein reader. These are biometric based solutions. So now people don't have to think about making that payment. But the biggest challenge with biometrics has been around privacy. People don't want to have a picture of their face taken. But when you're doing it in your hand, people are fine with that. So that, I think that's really exciting, because now we have a path to really get to something that many people can use. But just like what we talked about, different types of individuals, different demographics, they're all going to look at new technologies a little different. And until you get from the early adopter to the majority to the laggard, it could take some time. But I think it's really exciting that there's these different approaches coming into the market today.
Yeah, and it's also a matter, again, of that changing consumer kind of expectation, as well as balancing that with the value, right? So, I really like the face scan. Where, I think in China they had the like wink and check out, or smile and check out, right? Not because it was anywhere easier than waving your hand or even doing Apple Pay, but because you could capture my face and say, that's Trevor Sumner, this is his buying profile. And now I can use that in the rest of the store where he goes. Now, America's not ready for that. China's already accepted that, completely, right? Because it happens wherever they go. And so how do you balance the value that can be unlocked with the privacy? And especially in a world where, I don't trust Amazon. There's no way I trust Amazon with my face. I don't trust Google. I do trust Apple. Maybe that's maybe that's.
Apple has your face ID already.
Oh yeah, it does. I use it to open my phone, so it knows, it can do the facial recognition. I think
and you can pay, and you pay like this too. You authorize payment through your face too, right?
Yeah, so. But I think it's only on the phone, that it does not live in the cloud, but I'm not sure about that, right? But I trust Apple, right? And so, how do you balance those concerns with, being able to provide a better customer experience, able to link online to, in-store shopping behavior, better loyalty, better operations? I mean, remember, these margins are 2 to 4%. Right? So if you can unlock just a half a point, like that increases the business by 25% in terms of value. So lots of opportunities.
Yeah.
And there's also the excitement, I think, right? Like if I go to a shop and I wink to pay, I'll have to tell all my friends that happened. And I'll have to tell everybody like, hey, come, let's do something. I think the same thing, I think with several of these just walk out technologies, many people went once to check how it is, if there's a mistake and everything. I think that's some excitement there as well. Mark, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, that's okay. It's just you know what? I just don't think I could wink for a payment transaction, because then the store associate may think, oh, okay, am I wanting to go out on a date with them or something? I don't know. It just doesn't seem like.
Please, sir. Yeah, sir. Look at here and wink.
Yeah,
I don't know how it works, but it's something like that.
But this is. I mean, it's kind of funny because talking about more of the consumer technologies, because I went from iPhone with Touch ID, which I'm very familiar with, very easy, to then Face ID, which at first I was a little concerned because I don't like pictures of me being taken, things like that. But then it got really easy. Then COVID hit, and then it became more difficult with masks. So it changed there. But it comes back to the example you mentioned, Trevor, in facial for the shopping experience. What's the consumer going to get from the value from that? Because if the consumer feels like they're getting a tremendous amount of value, they will adopt it. But if they don't think they're getting much value, they won't adopt it. And that's where these shifts in new technologies, it's like that, it has to be understanding it from the customer, the consumer view.
Yeah, and that's a great example. So we do virtual try-on. So these digital screens in store that you select different colors of lipstick and it automatically puts it on your face on the screen and matching makeup. And we've done that for Sephora and MAC and Johnson & Johnson and a variety of different people. Not one time has anybody said, wait, there's a front-facing camera taking, video of your face, because the value is so high. Now, at the same time, we also have technology at Raydiant that basically same front-facing camera that says anonymously, 46-year-old male is in front of me. He's looking at the screen for 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds. So we can actually measure which content is impacting the client, which is the most effective, which changes them from walking by to watching to being at the shelf, even lift and learn technology to what products they pick up. But now that front-facing camera, it's like, well, I don't know. It's like, but it's GDPR compliant, it's CCPA, faces are all blurred. We don't store the video anywhere. It's immediately deleted. You can't see it, nothing personally identifiable. There's a little more reluctance to that, in part because the consumer doesn't see the value, but it unlocks amazing value for the brand and retailer. So we've got to have that conversation about, like, what does privacy mean? And do we trust the brands, a Kroger and Albertsons, with the front-facing camera that they're going to do the right thing, right? And in Europe, there's a lot more trust there because the penalties for GDPR are very punitive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And Trevor, have you seen any common pitfalls that retailers do when they're trying to create this more seamless implementation of checkout?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think we hit on a bunch of them around, changing consumer behavior is hard. Some of the unseen effects. Some of it is like, okay, we're doing a hybrid thing. So all of a sudden, I need staff to ask you a question. Are you paying by, like when I go to Target, it's like, are you paying by card or cash? I'm like, by card. Okay, do you want to do self-checkout? Or it's like, there's a person that has to guide me to route me to the right place because I'm doing hybrid. And so I think one of the things that, some people aren't doing and some are, like in Wakefern, they opened up a fully cashierless checkout, kind of seamless checkout kind of environment, but it's right next to a warehouse. And the goal is to test what are the dynamics when it goes all the way to that, because that hybrid, you're not going to really realize that fully. And so even if you're doing a hybrid test, how do you test the hypothesis about what happens if it's full adoption? What if you tweak this? What if you tweak that? So I think making sure that you're willing to test new experiences and fail and update and learn, like that's the hard part, especially, now that interest rates are higher, access to capital is more expensive. People are looking at profitability, for growth in an inflation environment. It's like, it's harder to find test money for those things to really learn. And I just hope that retail learned during COVID that they can deploy things rapidly if they learn. And that's a prerequisite to getting it right.
But I think one of the things that's still with us, and it's probably going to be a driver for many projects, is labor. Labor not only cost, but then can you get everyone that you need? I mean, I live in Atlanta, and there's a new grocery store close to my house, and it's the last, I think, 4 to 6 months they haven't opened because they haven't been able to get people. So it's still really important. The example, and it's going to be interesting to watch this, is it's in the quick service area, where in the store they're going to, and this is a few concepts are looking at this, but going completely to kiosks or self-checkout. So there's not even point of sale at the counter. There's only a person behind the counter to deliver food. So it'll be interesting, at least in the restaurant area, can they make that entire shift to a self-service experience? It's possible because you look at most quick service, it's heavily drive-through, so you might be able to get there. But I think it's interesting to test, is everyone ready to go there where there is no one nearby? There's no one that can hold their hand or validate things.
And it's not just error rate, right? It's customer sat, right? Like customer satisfaction. Maybe you can get me to do a kiosk thing. I went to a gelato place that made me go to the kiosk to order my gelato before I could get to the counter to look at all the different flavors. And I was like, this is wrong. This is so wrong. Like, I want to be there. I want to talk to them. I want that little spoon. I want to touch, I want to taste the pistachio. And like, I get it. You wanted to make the payment more seamless, but you just ruined the entire shopper experience, right? Yeah. So, you know, I do wonder, you know, where, like, we fundamentally are physical beings, right? And we want physical experiences. And so we have to be careful. Like one of the things I talk about COVID is like, you know, we talk about this amazing utopian world where we can just sit at home and order stuff and it comes by our door and we never have to leave. Yeah. How was that? Wasn't it terrible? Right?
Not communicating with anybody.
Yeah. It's definitely easy, but is that the experience people want? And that's why it's been interesting, because even internally, when we're looking at strategies and concerns, it's like when COVID was, call it in beginning of 21, everyone thought the world was going to go to e-com online. And that's the year things started to kind of show up. It's like, well, no, that's not what everyone wants. Yeah, some things very easy, do it online and no problems. But other things, people want experiences. They want that interaction, that connectivity with other people. And that's I think, again, it's understanding it from the consumer. What do they really want? And it's not always about doing things online behind a screen. It's more.
Yeah. And I think that may be one of the pitfalls, Paula, that you mentioned, which is like, you're just looking to squeeze out cost savings, as opposed to saying, oh, I can reallocate that person to improve the shopper experience. So that gelato cashier is now up in the front giving me more tastings, not less. That's guiding me through the new flavors, or have you tried this flavor and that flavor? And so if you look at it as freeing up to the ability to improve the shopper experience versus payments, that's a good trade-off. So,
and that comes to my next question, which we have to be very quick because we're about to end. And if anybody has any questions, please drop here in the chat. My team will let me know. But do you think it's a risk thinking that seamless and automated is one of the same?
Who's that for, Paula?
I mean, you can
answer,
that's
Mark.
Oh, that's at me. Okay, you're going to point to me. So definitely think.
I saw your bio when I asked, so I want
to Okay. So I definitely think it is a risk, and they're not the same. Seamless is, I think, much more consumer centric. It's the customer view. Automation, a customer or a consumer, they don't care about automation, but a merchant does. So it impacts their cost structure, maybe efficiencies and that. So I think you have to look at it by who you're thinking about. Is it the merchant? Is it the consumer? But they are completely separate. Now you can combine them and get that good experience where it works great for the consumer and it works well for the merchant. But that's tough to do, because you're trying to meet two different sets of needs, and they could be conflicting in some cases.
Yeah. And well, I want to ask both of you. I will start with Trevor. Is there any, aside from from winking, any other emerging and less implemented technology for checkout that you're seeing that you're excited about, especially when it comes all this trend towards AI and everything?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think about it holistically. I think computer vision is where I'm focused on. I think it's all about bringing digital technologies to the physical world, and you have to understand the physical world, and that's what computer vision does. And it's being deployed, you know, finally, where 85% of transactions occur, where profitability is generated, where loyalty is built in store. And it's being, you know, used to get accurate inventory and traffic understanding throughout the store. understanding, like I said, with the front-facing cameras, what messaging actually changes consumer behavior, and why that's important, even in the context of cashless checkout or checkout in general, is that I think retail media is going to change everything, right? So retail media is 80% margin business, right? It actually, at Amazon even, their advertising adds more to the bottom line than AWS does now, as per last week's earnings, right? If you're a grocery store, if you can get 4.3% more revenue from retail media, you double your profitability, double, right? So Andrew Lipsman at Insider Intelligence puts out a bunch of great research on this. And like groceries fundamentally are majority in store. When they can start activating retail media in store in a way that doesn't interrupt the shopping experience, that's contextual, that's integrated with checkout, integrated throughout the store journey, I think that is going to fundamentally change the way we think about the store experience, change the way brands connect with consumers at retail, how retailers share data with brands. It's super exciting to think about all of this data that's going to be available to us and how we can continually improve the shopper experience. That's what I'm excited about.
How about you, Mark? Any technology you want to tell us that is revolutionizing the checkout experience?
Yeah, so I would agree with Trevor. I think AI is really interesting. If you look at it from a payments perspective, it could, at least what we've seen is it could change and reduce fraud and again, very important for the merchant, a little bit less so for the consumer, at least in the US market, they don't care as much about that. But I think that can make it a more secure experience. I think what's going to be interesting, I don't know what the crystal ball says. And again, AI is at a very early stage of adoption. We have lots of data and the data is increasing. The question is, what's the best way? How can merchants take advantage of that data effectively? And that seems to have been always the challenge over the years, is not every merchant really uses the data. And if they had the data, then they could create that customer journey in a very different way, but they haven't been able to get there. So how can the tools be able to be enabled for any merchant to fully take advantage of? I think the one things on the consumer AI side, and I think it was with Microsoft Bing and some of the stuff they were showing, and this is the evolution of the technology. Some of the AI stuff that was coming back was a little bit maybe on the edge there. So it's got some learning to do, but it's really interesting and exciting how it's evolving it. But I think it all comes back down to is how can we call it democratized so everyone can take advantage of it. Not only the merchants, but what can it do for a consumer on their journey? And I think that's an unknown right now. So it'll be interesting to see how it plans out.
Yeah, and
yeah, I just
want to add one thing to that, which is, and the data is in areas that you can't even imagine. I'll give you an example in the checkout space, right? We believe in this world in the future where we have Apple glasses that light up with every product on the shelf with specials and coupons, whatever else. How does it recognize the product? Well, it's got some computer vision, right? Well, where do you get the data from that? Who's going to have that data? Well, if you do self-checkout, imagine me taking my product, scanning it all different directions. Someone like Target takes 7 different photographs, times 60 frames a second of this product and knows it's a Contigo 12 ounce, yada, 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 yada. All of a sudden, they have the best data stream for training computer vision models on product identification, right? So you don't think about this, but when you scan that product, they're collecting computer vision data on what a product looks like and how to identify it. That's just one of myriad examples of throughout the organization where there could be a treasure trove. Like that's a multi-billion-dollar data source, just taking pictures of products that go by. So think about every other area that you might be missing. Huge opportunities abound.
Guys, thank you so much. We ran out of time, but it's important to say that to create this better customer experience, is important to personalize and use this data accordingly, right? So excited to hear your thoughts. It was very nice. Thank you so much for joining us. And just to everybody know, our next webinar is going to be April 4th, and we're going to cover more of checkout. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.